The deep web is one of the most mind-blowing corners of the internet, not because it brings people joy or entertainment, but because it gives you something rare these days: complete freedom. There are no filters, no restrictions. You can say what you want, do what you want. It's like walking into a hidden world where the rules of the surface web don't apply. And that's what fascinated me. At the time, I was in college, and the deep web had become kind of a trend on campus. People were casually talking about it between classes, like it was just another social media app. That sense of normalcy made it seem safer than all the horror stories I'd heard. You know, the usual warnings: hackers, disturbing content, people somehow figuring out where you live. Those stories were exactly what kept me away for so long. But with half the campus diving in without any issues, I figured, why not? So I asked a friend to help me get started. When he came over, we opened up my laptop, and he began setting everything up for me. He explained that we'd be using the special browser to access the deep web, something called Tor. Then he asked a question that kind of stuck with me. "Are you planning to do anything illegal?" I said, "No, of course not." He nodded and said, in that case, we wouldn't need to install something called Tails, a more secure operating system for people planning to do, well, sketchy stuff. A little while later, everything was ready. I had a new IP address, and my friend gave me the do's and don'ts. His biggest piece of advice: when using the hidden wiki, the directory that helps you find deep websites, make sure to keep it in censored mode. That way I wouldn't accidentally click on something I really didn't want to see. For the next couple of weeks, I eased into it. And to be honest, it was kind of fun. I browsed through different forums, talked to some surprisingly normal people, and even bought a little weed just to see if the system really worked. It all felt oddly safe. I got cocky, way too confident for someone who didn't really know what they were doing. So one night, I decided to go deeper. I turned off the censored mode on the hidden wiki and started clicking through some of the darker links. Most of the pages didn't load or were just dead ends, which was frustrating, but I kept going. Then I stumbled across a site called All the Gore. It looked like a massive chat room with different topics. I've always had a strong stomach, watched plenty of horror films, violent crime documentaries, so I figured I could handle it. At first, it looked like just another edgy message board, but the more I read, the more I realized how disturbing this place really was. These weren't people sharing horror stories. They were actual murderers, bragging, explaining in full detail the things they'd done, and they could post photos. There was one user called Culture045 who seemed to have the spotlight. He started telling a story about how he broke into someone's home, hid under their bed, and waited until they were asleep. Then he described in graphic detail how he killed the parents and kidnapped their daughter.
And those pictures, those images are burned into my memory. They didn't feel fake. There was something chilling in the expressions, genuine fear in her eyes, and something twisted in his. One of the photos showed her tied to a chair in a dim room, the surroundings chaotic and disturbing. Then came another, where he looked directly into the camera, holding a power tool near her, smiling in a way that didn't feel human. That's when I snapped. I typed into the chat box, "You people are sick. You deserve to die. How can you even sleep at night?" Almost immediately, the chat box blew up. People mocked me, laughed at me. They called me names I don't want to repeat. Someone even said I was as helpless as the little girl in the photos. I wanted to leave the site. I should have. But instead, I made a huge mistake. I typed, "I'm calling the police. I'm getting this site shut down." The page went black. Suddenly, a new chat box popped up, green text on a black screen. A new username appeared, Admin1. He typed, Call the cops and you will regret it. I didn't type anything. I just reached for my phone, and right then I got a text. It simply said, "Call the police and you're dead." There was no number, no sender, just the message. I looked back at my screen and my webcam light turned on. My laptop was facing me. And then I saw it. On the screen was a live feed of me sitting at my desk looking down at my phone, taken in real time. I froze. And then Admin 1 typed again, "Put the phone down, now, and uncover your webcam." I panicked. I had no idea what to do. I placed the phone down, but kept the webcam covered. A few seconds later, another message. "Okay, be like that." Then, the real horror started. He posted my full name, my age, my exact address, and then the message, "It would be a shame if you and your college buddies ended up on this site." I gave in. I uncovered the webcam and did everything he told me to do. He walked me through steps to erase the site from my browsing history, to block myself from ever finding it again. When I was done, I got one last text. "Now, don't ever come back." Just like the last time, no number, just blank. I borrowed my friend's phone and called the police, but they couldn't find the site. They couldn't retrieve any of my browsing history, and since I found the site by randomly clicking links, there was no real way to trace it. I moved, changed everything, and yet, even now, I still have nightmares. But that was only the beginning.
A few days after that terrifying encounter, I was still shaken up. The police had told me they would do what they could, but without a trace of the site or any logs of my activity, it wasn't looking promising. They advised me to change all my personal information and maybe even consider moving. So I did both. I reached out to one of the few people I trusted, my friend David. He was the opposite of someone who'd ever get near the deep web. No interest in shady stuff, no parties, no drinking. He was focused, disciplined, and had always stayed out of trouble. When I told him everything that happened, he believed me. No questions, no judgment, just concern. That's why he didn't hesitate to let me crash with him for a while. At his place, I finally started to feel like I could breathe again. But that feeling didn't last long. One night, we were both up late studying. The apartment was quiet. Then I got a text. My phone lit up and I checked the message. Same as before. No number, no sender. Just the message, "Check your computer." It was like a switch flipped in my brain. My stomach dropped. I opened my laptop and right away I noticed something was off. The mouse cursor was moving on its own. I wasn't touching anything, but it glided across the screen smoothly, confidently, like someone else was sitting at my desk. I tried every keyboard command I could think of. Control-Alt-Delete, Alt-F4, even hard shutdown. Nothing worked. The laptop ignored me completely. I watched helplessly as whoever had control started downloading a strange piece of software. I didn't know what it was, but my gut told me it wasn't good. Then another text, "Look out your window." I was sitting next to the window at the time, and my heart was hammering in my chest. I slowly pulled back the curtain and looked out into the dark parking lot. And there he was. A man, standing next to a white van, staring up at me. He was leaning against the vehicle, holding a phone in his hand. When our eyes met, he nodded. I backed away from the window and called for David. He ran into the room and I showed him everything. The text, the computer, the man outside. He was just as freaked out as I was. We didn't want to escalate things too quickly, but with someone literally standing outside the apartment, we knew we couldn't take any chances. We called the police again.
They said someone would be there shortly. Meanwhile, another message popped up on my phone. Press Shift, Alt, and F5 at the same time to activate the software. I had no idea what it would do, and I wasn't planning to find out. We both stood there, frozen. David grabbed a baseball bat just in case the man outside decided to come in. And then, just a few minutes later, we heard it. The doorknob turning. It was locked, thankfully, but then came the banging. At first, it was rhythmic, like someone trying to test the lock. Then it got louder, more violent. The entire door rattled in its frame. And then scratching. The kind of scratching you can't mistake for anything else. Long, slow metal against wood. We stayed absolutely still. The noise lasted for a few more agonizing minutes. Then silence. We heard footsteps, slow and steady, walking down the hallway, fading. I got one last text before the cops arrived. We will be back. When the police showed up, I led them to the front door. Carved into the wood, clear as day, was my name. Not written in marker, engraved. That's when it all became real to the officers. They brought in a tech specialist the next morning to look through my laptop and phone. He ran diagnostics, scans, everything. Eventually, he managed to remove the mysterious software, but his face said it all. Your laptop's core files were compromised, deep-level corruption. You're not safe using this anymore. We wiped the entire system, and he suggested I replace the device completely. My phone had the same issue. No traceable source for the messages, no IP trail, nothing.
They promised to keep patrol units in the area just in case, and I hoped that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next day, I got home from class earlier than usual. I was exhausted. David wasn't home yet, so I figured I'd grab a quick nap. I went into my room, flopped onto the bed, and let my eyes close. I was just starting to drift off when I heard it, a faint rattling sound. It came from the closet. I sat up, heart racing. I waited, listening. Nothing. Maybe it was the house settling. Maybe I was just paranoid. I laid back down. A few minutes later, the closet door swung open. I bolted upright, just in time to see a man wearing a mask step out from the shadows. No hesitation, no slow, dramatic movement. He was coming straight for me. I flew out of bed, slammed the bedroom door shut behind me, and sprinted for my car. My hands were shaking as I jammed the keys into the ignition and peeled out of the parking lot. I didn't look back. When the police arrived, they combed through the apartment. There was no forced entry, nothing had been stolen or even touched, just the open closet door. No fingerprints, no signs that anyone had been there, but I knew what I saw. That night, they stationed 2 officers at the building's entrance, watching everyone who came and went. I opened my laptop and immediately knew something was wrong. My desktop wallpaper had changed again. This time, it was a disturbing photo. A man wearing the same mask I saw in the closet, hunched over what looked like a baby in a dimly lit cabin. He had a knife in his hand. The photo was graphic, violent, and unmistakably real. All of my files and applications were gone. In the center of the screen sat the same software that had been forced onto my computer earlier. I clicked it. I didn't want to, but I had to know. A window opened. Full screen. No exit button, no controls. It was a live stream. A boy, maybe 13 or 14 years old, was sitting at a computer completely unaware that I and probably others were watching him through his webcam. In the corner of the screen, a chat box appeared. A message popped up. "Welcome to our live stream. We're glad everyone could be here. Thank you, John, for joining us." My blood ran cold. They were waiting for me. I stared at the screen in disbelief. They'd said my name, my real name, and they waited for me to log on before starting the stream. The boy on the screen had no idea. He was just scrolling through his phone, headphones on, completely oblivious. Behind him, there was a closet door, barely noticeable in the corner of the frame. And then,
It began to open. My stomach turned. A man in a mask, just like the one I had seen in my own closet, stepped out silently, toolbox in hand. He placed it on the floor without making a sound, reached in and pulled out a roll of duct tape. I wanted to shut my laptop, but I couldn't move. It was like I was paralyzed with fear and disbelief. The man crept up behind the kid, yanked his headphones off, and slapped the tape over his mouth before the boy even had a chance to scream. The kid started thrashing and crying, his eyes filled with absolute terror. I knew that look. I'd felt that fear. The man dragged him out of his chair and onto the floor. Then came another message in the chat box. "He's ready. Let's begin." I saw people in the chat, real people, typing things like, "This is gonna be good," and "Do the eyes first." Dozens of usernames filled the box, each one egging the masked man on like it was some sick show they'd all paid to see. And then the torture started. He took out a screwdriver, long, rusty, and stabbed it into the kid's chest. The boy let out a muffled, broken cry through the tape. Blood began pouring out, staining his shirt. The man just kept pushing the tool deeper and deeper until he pulled it out and reached for something else. A hammer. He raised it high and slammed it down on the kid's hands again and again until they were nothing but broken, bleeding pulp. I looked away, tears in my eyes, hands trembling, but I could still hear it. Every crunch, every muffled scream. I tried every command I could think of to shut it off. I pressed keys, I tried to force a shutdown, I even pulled the battery out and put it back in, but nothing worked. The stream wouldn't stop. The man took out an electric saw next. He pressed it against the boy's face and turned it on. The sound. That sound. I'll never forget it. The high-pitched whine as the blade tore through flesh and bone. The camera even caught some of the blood spray. I wanted to throw my laptop across the room. And then the man gouged out the kid's eyes with the screwdriver and slit his throat. He let the body drop like it was trash. The screen froze on the image of the boy's lifeless body. I vomited all over the floor. I was shaking, breathing hard, covered in sweat. Then the chat box came back. User Culture 045. Message: "Thanks for watching, John." And just like that, the program closed. I stared at the dark screen, heart pounding, my hands were still hovering over the keyboard. And then my phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages. I checked them. They were from people I knew. My mom, my cousins, old classmates, friends. Every single message was filled with horror and confusion. "How could you send that to me? What the hell is wrong with you? You sick freak, I'm calling the police."
I collapsed to the floor. Somehow, those monsters had sent the live stream to everyone in my contacts, as if I had been the one behind it, as if I had recorded and broadcasted the whole thing. My life was being torn apart, not just by what I had seen, but by the way they'd made it look like I was responsible for it. When the police arrived, I told them everything. They saw the evidence, my corrupted laptop, the messages, the reactions from my contacts. They brought in cybercrime experts. It took weeks, but eventually they tracked down the people behind it. 4 men were arrested. Culture 045, Admin 1, and 2 others who helped run the site. They had been operating out of several different countries, running a network of live torture streams on the dark web. The site was found and shut down. The authorities told me it was one of the worst they had ever seen. I got a new phone, a new laptop, new everything. And for the first time in months, I felt safe. I wish I could end this with some cliche, like "I still hear whispers in the dark," or "I still get texts from unknown numbers." But the truth is, I never heard from them again. No more messages, no more live streams. They were gone. But the worst part The people in the chat room, they weren't caught. The ones cheering, the ones encouraging, the ones who enjoyed it, they're still out there. And for every Culture 045 that gets arrested, there are 100 more waiting in the shadows. So if you're ever tempted to explore the deep web out of curiosity, don't. Don't do what I did. Don't make the mistake of thinking it's just another part of the internet. Because once you're in, really in, you might see things you'll never forget. And worse, someone out there might decide to see you back.